Okay, so we're rolling. Ishan, Prabhu, you can start and try to everybody get comfortable.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Okay. I guess I want to say first, I'm a very insignificant devotee. So many people had association with Srila Prabhupada, but it seemed that there weren't too many devotees at that time. It was 1968, in Montreal, San Francisco, like that, New York. Anyway, Hansaduta moved into the house that I was in charge of a rooming house. Hansaduta moved in with his wife, Himavati, and I had no interest in Krishna consciousness whatsoever. But my wife wanted to check it out. So anyway, long story. But somehow I got one of Srila Prabhupada's original volumes, in those brown covers. And I was doing yoga and every day, and my room was very sparse. And the book says in the beginning, one should hear this. One should hear and not read haphazardly, but one should hear and go step by step. So I would do my asanas and my breathing, and then I would sit in lotus posture, and I would out loud, and I would hear. And in his language, unedited and everything, and I had an strange experience. I had something I never experienced before in my heart, a kind of very subtle, mild, orgasmic feeling in my heart. And I thought, I got to meet the person who wrote this book. And so then I went to New York, and I was chanting a little bit Hare Krishna by that time, and going to the temple. Jai Pataka was a brahmachari at that time. He used to come sometimes to the base under my window where I would be sleeping, and he'd chant japa very, very loud to wake me up to come to the temple. So anyway, I was ushered into Srila Prabhupada's apartment behind the matchless gifts. And there were different devotees with him. And I remember Naranarayan was there, because his voice was booming. and there were others, I think Gargamuni, and there were 4 or 5, and it seemed like they were all shouting at Srila Prabhupada, like as if he couldn't hear. Srila Prabhupada would be a little inquisitive, yes, what is, and they'd be talking very loud. And then all of a sudden it seemed like the room was empty, and I was alone with Srila Prabhupada in his room. It was just a white room, bare. All there seemed to be was a little desk that he sat behind, and with these white walls, in a bare room, a little room. And it seemed like the atmosphere was very not easy to describe, but others have also talked like that. It was as if you were in Vaikuntha. It was a special atmosphere. Srila Prabhupada always acted completely naturally, as if there was nothing special going on, but you knew you were in the presence of a very great personality. And someone had put, a piece of banana prasadam in my hand, but I was just fixated on Srila Prabhupada, and I asked him some kind of silly question. I was involved with the music, and he opened his Bhagavad Gita and read from the Divisions of Faith chapter for about 5 minutes. He just read to me, and then today it seems like I can't make any connection between what he read and what my question was, but at the time it answered every question. In my mind, everything felt perfect. And when I got out on the street about 15-20 minutes later, I opened my hand and there was this piece of squashed banana in my hand. I was so stunned by his presence that I was unaware of the fact that I was squashing a piece of banana in my hand. So then at that time, I had a wife who became a devotee too, Vibhavati Dasi. And she was with me, and there was an initiation ceremony. So we also, although we were legally married, we got married by Srila Prabhupada in that ceremony. And Srila Prabhupada made this, I think that was 62 2nd Avenue, where the Brahmananda was the president. And it was, there would be derelicts sleeping in the front doorway and things like that. It was the Bowery, you know. There would be cars in the street with no tires on them. It was just Kali Yuga in an advanced way. So anyway, he makes this fire sacrifice and the whole place is filled with smoke. It's just like people are wheezing and coughing and people want to open the door and windows, and Srila Prabhupada said, no. He said, this smoke is purifying, and keep the door closed and everything like that. My wife wanted to escape, but already our dhoti and sari were tied together. She couldn't escape. So, let's see. So that was New York. And okay, then Srila Prabhupada knew I was interested in music. I was a little bit on the trumpet. So he wrote me and said, you should go to London, because Mukunda Shamsundar and Gurudas were there with their better halves, you know, and and joined them because they're musical, and of course they were already working with George Harrison and cutting the records, Hare Krishna and all that. So so I went, you know, I collected some money and I went to England, and oh yeah, we couldn't open. I didn't get on with George Harrison at all because I wasn't a Beatle fan. I was in the recording studio and I said, why don't you cut your hair like the rest of us, you know? So the devotees ushered me out, really. I just never, you know, couldn't care less.
But you're in a picture at John Lennon's house, I think, or at the Conway Hall, or one of those halls.
I'm at, yes, with my trumpet, there are pictures. I have them on my computer. So, playing trumpet, and Srila Prabhupada was singing and I was playing my horn. But he encouraged like that. So, yeah, so that's right. So then, we couldn't open the temple at Berry Place. Zoning and all that. It wasn't zoned to be a church or a temple. John Lennon invited us all out to his place in Ascot. And he had an estate that was owned by some nobleman, so-called, who couldn't pay his taxes and like that. It was, so I used to have a relationship with him. I was in charge of a crew of devotees, like a temple commander. The big guys, Mukunda Gurudas and Shamsundar, were in the city doing red tape and PR to open the temple and whatnot. And I was in charge of the crew at Lennon's estate. I was in his house. We were refurbishing it. He would come down to the kitchen in his pajamas and he'd play the piano. He played Hare Krishna in every tempo and every style of music that you could imagine. It would be a Strauss waltz, or it would be bluegrass, or he played it all. And he was very friendly. So,
who was in your crew, Kulashekar? Or?
Kulashekar was there, yeah. And I don't remember all their names. Some of them later.
Not Tribhuvanam?
Oh, Trivikram Maharaj.
Tamal was around then.
Tamal came later when we were in Berry Place. And he, Srila Prabhupada said, go there. We were living there, householders. And Tamal said,
Dhananjaya was around.
Huh?
Dhananjaya might have.
He came there then. he said, all householders now don't live in the temple. I had no working papers, nothing. Into the street all of a sudden. But tomorrow, you know. So, anyway, we go out to Lenin. I'm at Lenin's. I say, well, my spiritual master's in Germany. Why don't you invite him to come here? And he said, nice idea, you know. So I tell the big man, and he was probably planning to come anyway. We're meeting Srila Prabhupada in the airport, and we have this lounge where Srila Prabhupada's coming out of this gate. Is that what you call it? And I take all the furniture there, and there was a big coffee table and cushions from the couch and whatnot, and I made him a big Vyasasana against the far wall, you know. So when Srila Prabhupada comes out, all the devotees, they hit the deck. They are all bowed down, but Srila Prabhupada sees the Vyasasana and understands everything. So he can hardly walk through all the bodies. He's working his way through with his cane and whatnot. But I didn't bow down because I could see that he might need a little assistance. So when he got to the Vyasasana, which is about, you know, that's high off the ground, I take Srila Prabhupada by his elbow and the forearm, and I help him to get up on his Vyasasana. And he's just glowing, you know. And something happened that I touched Srila Prabhupada many, many times after that, massage this and that, and taking him on walk, and taking off his boots and putting on his boots, you name it. But something very unusual happened, that when I touched Srila Prabhupada's body to help him to get on that seat, it was, my whole body became charged with an energy that I've never experienced before or since. You could only compare it that if you had a big bucket of gulab jamans and you ate them all and drank all the juice, and it was in your blood, pulsing in your body, a tremendous feeling of sweetness that I can't really put into words. And all the way home from the airport in the car, the devotees were talking amongst each other, and I was just sitting stunned with that feeling in my body, you know. And then, oh, where are we going? Oh, so then we have this big adventure, you know. We're living with Srila Prabhupada on John Lennon's estate. There were servants' quarters, because there was like a set of houses, like condominiums side by side, and the main building we turned the temple. There was an indoor tennis court, and we turned it into a temple room. So I had fixed up Srila Prabhupada's quarters in a way that he could be comfortable. And we were all doing different things. I was building Srila Prabhupada Vyasasana in the temple room, and I didn't know he had entered. And all of a sudden I could feel there's a presence. And I look up at Srila Prabhupada, and he's just so soft. You know, he said, thank you so much. Thank you so much. People don't know who Srila Prabhupada is, because he has this very formal, authoritative presence. But we have to understand that he's orchestrating a whole movement. He told me on a morning walk, I would be the only one to take him on the walk in the morning. He told me that I'm nobody's master, he said, but I have to take this authoritative role, or no one will hear my teaching. He said, I have to take this position. But he said, but really you can think of me like I'm your father, he said, your spiritual father. And so he was the sweetest, most loving, softest, warmest person that anyone could ever imagine meeting. I'll tell you some stories that happened there to make the point. You won't believe the things I'm going to tell you. But he had to take this to take the position of teacher, that you do this and you don't do that, and you do this, because we're all crazy, and we're not capable, So then, me and another devotee, I won't mention his name, we were alternating on different days giving Srila Prabhupada massage. The first time I had to give Srila Prabhupada a massage, I was so nervous that I couldn't breathe properly. And Srila Prabhupada asked me, maybe I'm having a physical problem and I'm not strong enough to... And I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I'm just very nervous and I'll settle down. And he said, oh, that's all right, But there was this other devotee. I remember, we would use mustard oil and we would melt camphor in the mustard oil to give massage. Srila Prabhupada would take massage like a soldier. It wasn't a massage for pleasure. He needed his body serviced, and that was that. And he would go to put out his arm. It was all for circulation. Put out his other arm. He would sit up like that, and one time he fell asleep when I was massaging him, and to catch himself, he fell over and he caught himself he would sit in a semi-lotus position. His legs went out straight and his arms went out, and he caught himself before falling back, and he said, if you can make me fall asleep, he said, you're getting pretty good at that. So there was another devotee, I won't say who because now he's a prestigious person in our movement, but he said, we were alternating. He would massage one day, I would massage the next day. And he said, when I have Srila Prabhupada with me and I'm massaging, he's just like a baby in my hands. I know exactly what he needs, and it would be really better if I did it every day. And so when I massaged Srila Prabhupada my day, I said, this devotee is saying that he knows exactly what you need, and he should be the one who massages you regularly. And Srila Prabhupada, what is your feeling about that? And Srila Prabhupada said, he looked up and he said, any fool can do. Like that. So, he knew where people were coming from, and he put everyone in their place. So anyway, we would go on morning walk, and I would walk with Srila Prabhupada. I'd walk a little behind, okay? Because I was in veneration, sensing that such a great personality, you sense his presence. We hear that people who never even saw him before and didn't know about spiritual life, when they saw him, they would bow down and not. So he had this grace of, so he'd be in his black hat, and big black coat and rubber boots, and his saffron robes, and I'd help him put on the boots, and we'd walk. So right outside Lenin's place, there was a swimming pool, and the wall around the swimming pool about this high and this wide, like a brick wall. And Srila Prabhupada's in it with the boots and the big coat. You see pictures of him in England like that on his wall. And his cane. And the length of the pool, what does Srila Prabhupada do? He hops up on the edge of the ledge, and he walks one foot in front of the other, like it's a game, like it's fun, like he's a kid. And then he jumps off the other end. And then it takes a few steps, and I'm, running beside. And he looks back and he says, doesn't hold very much water. He's not impressed. And then we're walking, and we pass, and some man is currying a donkey, with a brush, and he says he gestures hello to the man from a distance, but he says to me, either you serve Krishna or you serve the donkey. And then a little dog comes and starts yapping, and Srila Prabhupada says, come on, and the dog gets all excited, and he's running in circles around Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada says, come on, and the dog is barking, and the more Srila Prabhupada addresses him, the circles get bigger and bigger, and the dog is going faster and faster. And then we go a little. Not all of these things happen on the same day, but they're things that I remember. So then, we're walking, and this acorn gets in Srila Prabhupada's boot. So he's leaning on my shoulder, and I'm bending down to pull off his boot, and out comes the acorn. We were walking a little further, and another acorn gets in his boot, and he said, and we do the same thing, and then he says to me, why do they do that? It seemed like the more formal you try to be with Srila Prabhupada, the more he tries to lighten you up, But so then it was on that walk that he told me that I'm nobody's master, or you can think of, but I have to take this posture for teaching. You can just think of me that I'm like your father, he said, your spiritual father. He said it with such softness like that. And so then we're walking, and we pass this little pool, like some kind of enclosed pool that artificially made. And Srila Prabhupada says, just for breeding mosquitoes, that's all. He was and then we get to these thickets, they're about 6 feet tall, and they're quite close to each other. And you wouldn't believe that Srila Prabhupada takes his cane, and he's fencing with the thickets to get through them. He's just like somebody who's fencing with a sword. And I'm just, watching like this. So, when I first went to see him in his room to massage, he said, you're going to take care of me, he said. He's like a little child, and very light, and very, very much. So this formality that people see in his lectures and hear in his talks, it's his authoritative posture as a teacher of the world, but as a human being, as a person. We shouldn't say exactly he's a special person from Vaikuntha, but he's the most. One time I went to his room and I knocked. I'm in his room, and I had to build a shelf for his deities in a closet that was open, and I hesitate to use the hammer, Srila Prabhupada's behind his desk, and he said, yes, go on, do your thing, make it. And then I'm hammering, and I tend to do overkill when I'm built. He said, why so strong? He says, we're not going to be here very long, But one time I went into his room, and you hear this voice, yes, like that. And I bow down in the doorway, and when I raise my head up, Srila Prabhupada has a smile that's like the sunshine, it's such a beautiful, so much love and so much beauty in that smile that I simply couldn't make eye contact with him out of shyness. No one had ever looked at me like that in my life. Out of shyness, I put my head down, and immediately he could see that I wasn't capable of reciprocating with him on that level. And immediately he adjusted and became a little more formal like that. So, then we had an initiation ceremony. We had a fire ceremony in the temple. It was an indoor tennis court at Lenin's estate, and we made it into a temple room. and he was giving me Gayatri mantra to become a Brahmin, you know. And I didn't know anything, but so he counts on his fingers, you know, 1 to 10, and then indicates that we're sitting beside the fire and the kirtan's going on, and he's doing like that. And I had no idea what he was doing with his fingers. And then he showed me twice, and then he showed me 3 times. And I still didn't get it. And he said to me, you know, there's a kirtan going on, and the smoke coming out of the fire, and he's trying to show me how to count on my... And he says, if you can't do these simple things, he said, like, where do we go from here? You know, if you can't count to 10. So I wanted so much to please him, and I felt so helpless, and I threw up my arms in the air in a gesture of desperation, and Srila Prabhupada threw his head back and had a good laugh, you know, and then finally he showed me how to do that and gave me the mantras. So I asked him the next day, do I have to do deity worship? I was afraid of deity worship. I thought, I'll have to memorize things and I won't be able to do them right, and I was all frightened of it. And he just said, you know, what is the difficulty? You know, but sometimes you just can't, they have no answer for his, so I let it go at that. And then my wife was having her first child, and we went to the hospital, and when coming back, the child was all bound up, you know, in a cotton blanket, and we entered the temple room, and Srila Prabhupada's on the Vyasa-san. I had built him I didn't know what a Vyasa-san was. I built him a Vyasa-san that he was sitting about 4.5 to 5 feet off the ground, and there was a staircase going up to it, and a little podium kind of thing that he sat behind. So when Srila Prabhupada saw that I came into the room with the new baby, you know, so he immediately gestured, come over here. And there was a kirtan going on, and he took a rose, a yellow rose, and he put it under my daughter's chin, you know, like in a very sweet, gentle way. And every day he would ask about the child, how's the child doing, when I would see him for massage. And he would give advice what the mother should eat. And he said, first 4 years, no discipline. First 4 years, as loving and as permissive as possible. And then you start to slowly tighten up. So the child is armed with that kind of feeling that is a loving universe, loving world, like that, and then can accept a little instruction and not feel so rebellious.
Do you remember anything about the woman's diet that he was saying?
About what?
Mother's diet?
I don't recall, but it was something for that, because to balance the digestion after that, but I don't remember what it was. But I said, can you give her a name, my baby? And he said, generally, we don't give names till initiation, but you can call her Braja Devi. so she became Braja Devi. What was that? It went through my mind. Yeah, he asked me to bring her up to his room, and she was a newborn baby, so many days old. And he was so delighted to see this little baby and take her in his hands and kind of make her dance on his little desk, you know. He just loved, he was such a loving person. There was something, but I can't remember at the moment. So, yes, and oh yeah.
When you mentioned him walking up with that pond, was the same place where he walked up on the ledge?
The pond was different. The ledge was in a swimming pool, outdoor swimming pool.
The thing that he said was breeding mosquitoes?
Was a small pond further down on the property. So, oh, you know, you hear it that Srila Prabhupada knows what everybody's thinking. But in different times, it's like you're with Srila Prabhupada, you don't have to say anything. Whatever you're thinking about, he addresses. He must have been completely clairvoyant. You know? No, I'm serious. He's a pure devotee. He has all the mystic powers without separate endeavor, right? It says that in our Bhagavatam. So I was the temple commander there, so to speak, and Malati, that's Shamsundar's wife, is a very independent spirit. And I was asking her to do something this way or that way, and she wouldn't have any part of it. She, you know, and so I was thinking to myself, I'm not a highly social being anyways. I was thinking, what do I need to be with these devotees for? I'll just be Krishna conscious on my own and forget all this association business. And this was in my mind, and I went into Srila Prabhupada's room and he said, in the spiritual world, everyone is together. They're all serving together in a very beautiful way, and everyone's so happy to be together like this. All right. I had a similar experience, but I shouldn't jump right away to that. Okay. So then, oh yeah, like Yoko Ono was not into Krishna consciousness at all, and she had a very strong grip on John Lennon. So I was bringing them daily Mahaprasadam, and they were taking it in their bed and whatnot. I'd go up to their room, and Yoko would say, you know, they were all into hard drugs. They were shooting up and whatnot. And their noses running all the time. Oh yeah, Srila Prabhupada said that to me one time. In his room at Lenin's estate. He once said to me, he said, you have seen this? You know, people injecting drugs into them. He said, Krishna consciousness is like that. He said, you just keep taking and you'll get hooked. So anyway, Yoko says to me, you know, you have your mantras and your Hare Krishna, and we have our way of getting high, and it's all the same. And I told Srila Prabhupada, he says, he's a nice boy, he says, but that woman, he says, she's useless. So anyway, after a certain point, he could see we're not going to make progress with these people, and so he said, we have no business here. We leave this place. So then it was London. You know, the temple was open now. We had clearance or permit to do that, and I was still doing. I made his whole room on the second floor of that building, a 7-Bury place, and painting and everything. Did you want to ask me something?
No.
So, Srila Prabhupada arrived there at night by car. I don't remember all the details of everything, but we were rushing to get his room ready, and painting this, that. And I look out the window. So I don't know why I looked out the window, or because it was nighttime, but I could see Srila Prabhupada's getting out of this car, and I'm on the second story, and immediately he looks up and gives me the broadest smile, as if he knows somebody's looking, you know. And I said, Srila Prabhupada's coming, you know. So. And he comes in, and the paint is still wet, you know, everything, but we're happy that he's there. And I remember there were some press interview. Oh yeah, there was a little heater there, you know, a little heater, and it had a fan in it, and it made a noise. And Srila Prabhupada, take this out, he says, it makes cut a cut, cut a cut, cut a cut. He said, he liked quiet. He preferred quiet to the heat, you know. So I remember there was an interview and these people from the press were there. And it wasn't a consistent experience, but there were times, you know, we talk about people's auras, and I'm not a person who sees auras, but I was sitting there and Srila Prabhupada was talking with the people from the press in that room in a buried place, and acting in the most natural way, and his whole body was surrounded with light. And I could tell that the people who are interviewing can't see this, but I can see this, and it's like, it's silver blue, like an electric spark, like you see sometimes electricity comes out of the wall. It was a silver blue aura all around him, stunning, and it was like this wide, you know, and she's just a special person. So this is a nice story of when Srila Prabhupada read my mind. It was too noisy in the temple. I remember we were getting the marble in to make an altar at Berry Place. And somehow or other, there were 6 or 7 people carrying it. And it was like really thick, and somehow the weight got shifted, and it was more than I could hold. And I cried out, "Stop!" You know, and Srila Prabhupada was standing there, and he looked at me like in my distress. I remember when he first came, he was, I don't know exactly what was, but so many things come to mind. But I remember when Srila Prabhupada was examining the temple room that Shyam Sundar's working on, getting that temple room, and he had asked me, you know, you can do some carpentry, why don't you work with Shyam Sundar? And I asked Shyam Sundar, you need some help? No help. He didn't want me. He wanted to do it by himself. So I tell you, he says, you're helping Shyam Sundar? He doesn't want any help, Srila Prabhupada. All right. So, what different things. Oh, so then it was too noisy. Oh yeah, we were going out on Sankirtan. Tamal Krishna had arrived there, and we were all going out on Sankirtan, and we were painting the temple, and we had some gold paint, you know, to do certain parts of the banisters and this and that. And I had a pair of rubber boots that I cut to about this height, and I took the gold paint and I painted my boots golden. And Tamal says, you can't go out on Sankirtan like that. What are people going to think of our movement? And I said, well, the only boots I have, you can't go out on Sankirtan. The next day, he comes to me, Tamal, and he's all apologetic. And he says, Srila Prabhupada saw your boots, and he liked them very much. So I could go out on Sankirtan with my golden boots on. So, anyway, so the temple was too noisy. Once I had to bring Srila Prabhupada hot water from down in the kitchen, and he was that was in the basement, and he was on the 2nd floor, and I had taken too long, and he was waiting for the hot water, and he chastised me why it was taking so long. So it was too noisy, so they got Srila Prabhupada an apartment, a very nice apartment. And it was a furnished apartment in London, and it was packed with furniture, every room. In his room, Srila Prabhupada said, it was one of those, it had a box spring and then a mattress and like that. He said, too soft, he said. It's too soft, I can't rest on that thing. So I took out the mattress. I took out the furniture from the whole apartment and put it into one room, as if it was a jigsaw puzzle in 3 dimensions. It was from floor to ceiling, every piece of furniture, every mattress, every lamp, and it was all in that room, right up to the door. And Srila Prabhupada was coming to get his massage, and he passed the room, and he looks at it, and he laughs, and he says, "You are an artist." He said. So he was just. I remember, I heard him talking about homosexuality from where I was getting ready for the massage, and he said, because Ray Rama, who was working on the BTG in New York, he was having problems living with the other brahmacharis, and he wanted to live separate, to move out. And Srila Prabhupada said, should not be a problem. He said, Kirtanananda had that problem, but he's okay now, like that. and, I could hear these things. I said, my ears pick up. So anyway, I was giving Srila Prabhupada, he wanted a haircut. So I'm shaving him with a buzzer, before the massage, and he doesn't have it sparse, and he looks down. I don't know if he's playing with us or what. Sometimes, like I'm a child and he's trying to be friendly and lighten me up. But he said, all the hair, a little bit of hair, it fell to the carpet, And he said, he looks at it and he says, "That's all?" He says, that's all that's come up. And then Tamal swooped in and he saw the hair and he said, "All right, Ishan," he says, "I want some of that hair." So, as a keepsake. So, one time, another time that I'm going over to the apartment to give Srila Prabhupada his massage, and I have to go on the subway. And this is a place where Srila Prabhupada is reading my mind again. I'm on the subway, I'm 25 years old, and all these pretty girls are on the subway, and I'm going to see my spiritual master, and I allow my mind to get distracted. By the time I reach Srila Prabhupada's apartment, I'm so embarrassed, and I'm feeling so unfaithful and guilty because I have become infected with the feeling of attraction to these girls. I'm giving a massage, Srila Prabhupada's silent, and I'm holding this stuff inside me like I'm ashamed of myself. And Srila Prabhupada says, "Harinam, Harinam, Harinam, Eva Kevalam," like that, And then he's quiet for about 5 minutes. The massage takes 25 to 30 minutes. He says this process is good. Then he's quiet. And then he says, 5 minutes later, he says, when I was a little boy, my mother was doing something with wooden matches. And he said, and I was just little, and I wanted to make this scratch, 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 he said. He said, so I did that when I was alone and my dhoti caught on fire. He said, he showed me, he said, I still have this scar on my thigh, the inside of my thigh. From that, he said, but I was lucky some men were there and they put out the fire, but I still have this scar. Then he's quiet again. 5 minutes, and then he says, when Krishna was a little boy, he also made mischief, and he got into difficulty, he got into trouble. And he paused, and he said, but he always got out, because he was Krishna. And then he got up, dropped his gamcha, and he would walk to take his bath in his Brahmin underwear. And Hari Ram, Ram, Hari Hari. Now, I would always write down whatever Srila Prabhupada said, and when I got home I put those things down. I had no idea what he was talking about. But what he was saying was, you're looking at girls. When I was a little boy, I wanted to do something I shouldn't, and I got burnt, and I was lucky, and I still have this scar. And when Krishna was little, he also made mischief, but he always got out. So he was telling me that if you were going to make mischief, there's a good chance you're going to get burned. You play with fire, you're going to get burned. But look how delicately and kindly he knew what was my condition of mind, and he didn't blast me. He just kindly told me this little story over the course of a half an hour, that you're not Krishna, that when I was little, I was burnt by fire, by playing with fire, and Krishna, but you're not Krishna, so if you play with fire, you might get burned. And he let it go at that. And I could have missed the whole thing, except that I wrote out those separate lines when I got home. So let me see where I am. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada, he always knows what everybody's thinking. So, yes, this will only take a second. Oh, one time I was giving Srila Prabhupada's massage at Lenin's place. And the last thing was always the feet. When Srila Prabhupada puts out his foot, it's okay, you don't have, and he goes like this. He's sitting there, and he goes like this. As if it's like a commandment from God, like, this is your position, boy, you know? But it was so profound, like it was... he told me, if you have trouble with your mind, he said, you have trouble with your mind, chant louder. And, you know, japa. And if you're still having trouble, chant louder. So he was saying like that. Okay, okay. You know, he once asked, do you have any doubts, he said. But when you're in his presence, you can't have any doubts. They're all gone. I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, no doubts. He said, you can open a temple, he said. I said, where, Srila Prabhupada? He said, wherever there's people. I said, when, Srila Prabhupada? He said, whenever you're ready. Now, I remember Kula Shekhar was attracted to playing the tabla, you know. Yeah, don't let me forget that Srila Prabhupada was playing on the tambura. Oh, okay, I was down at the base of the stairs and Srila Prabhupada's playing the tambura in his room and singing Chintamani by himself, you know. Bum bum bum, bum 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 bum, Chintamani, and his voice is like filling the whole complex, you know. It was so beautiful. I just sat at the base of the stairs. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada, Kula Shekhar wanted to play tabla, and he goes up with his tablas, you know, to Srila Prabhupada's room, and he says, Srila Prabhupada, he speaks British accent. He said, my teacher, he says I have very good hands, you know, and I am very good for playing tabla. And Srila Prabhupada said, put here, you know, on his desk. And then there was total silence. And all of a sudden you hear all of these, like an orchestration of beats on this tabla, like it was a symphonic thing. Obviously, it was Srila Prabhupada, and he was playing the tabla.
And nobody recorded it.
No, and then it's like there was a dead silence after this, and you could tell, like Kula Shekhar was telling Srila Prabhupada that he had good hands, but that was the end of the discussion on tablets. Oh, I remember at Conway Hall, we were at Conway Hall, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting up on this table, take a piece of orange at the end, and threw it behind, and I went behind his table, we were up on a stage, you know, and I got that, and I had taken notes, during his lecture, but you can't take every word, I don't take short. He said, the next day he asked me during, did you get all the notes? And and I said, no, just little bits, Srila Prabhupada, because I said, oh, all right. He asked me, he had the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the brown covered Srimad Bhagavatam that he brought from India. He said, we have in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he said, the translation, the Sanskrit, the word for word, the translation. He said, what do you think about all that? And he wanted to see how it was striking us. And at that time, I couldn't make head or tails out of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I simply read the commentary, the purports. I didn't know what the translations were about at all. We only had those first 3 volumes. I knew nothing about Krishna. He asked me, are you always thinking of Krishna? All we had was the Blue Bhagavad Gita, and which was abridged, and it was some kind of philosophical statement, but no flavor of Krishna's personality except well, now it all makes, he says to Arjuna, how has these impurities come upon you? But he's put Arjuna in that situation. But so he's a little bit tricky, Krishna, and he's saying, oh, Arjuna, how come you're having so much difficulty at the Battle of Kurukshetra? But he put Arjuna in that position. So, but we didn't know much about Krishna at that time. Yeah. So, so he said, you're always thinking of Krishna? And I said, Srila Prabhupada, I don't know hardly anything about Krishna. What is that? And I said, I just try and think of you, Srila Prabhupada, because truly, I was so heavily impressed that here is a transcendental personality, and he lives in another dimension, in another world. And I just tried to, my whole connection with Krishna consciousness was thinking about him. And I just tried to think of you, Srila Prabhupada, and he gave me an instruction that is so profound. He said, you can just always thank you, Hare Krishna. He said, you can just always think of me how I'm always thinking of Krishna. And isn't that's our third line of Gayatri, or second line of Gayatri, isn't it? And it's in the books that we're meditating on his love for Krishna, and we're trying to follow him in that way. And he writes in Bhagavatam 1:5-25 that we become infected with the qualities of the pure devotee, just like an infectious disease. And with the idea that the student imbibes the flavor of his devotion, and gradually his whole being becomes changed. So, but he was just saying, he said it in the very, you can just always think of me how I'm always thinking of Krishna. I remember. Oh, that's very nice. So, let's see. Oh yeah, well, my baby was born, and my wife, Vibhavati, she was carrying the baby down the stairs, and Srila Prabhupada is walking up. And he plays with the baby's cheek with his finger, and the baby starts crying. Srila Prabhupada laughs, and then he says to Vibhavati that, who are you more attracted to, your baby or Krishna? Yeah, oh, I remember that he went, I was in his London apartment. I go to see him to do massage. I'm shaved up, face and head, and he thanks me. He says, you look so nice. Thank you so much, for looking Brahminical. He wanted, people should know. He wanted us to be clean shaven, or look at least like a gentleman. Didn't want the hippie thing at all. And so he thanked me like that in a very gracious and loving way. He wanted us to be like that. So I feel it's important that people know. They say, "Oh, Master, be merciful, give us the shade of your lotus feet, but I can't take off my beard, or shave my hair." I shouldn't be confrontational, but I think people should know that he wanted that. He wanted us to be like that. So then, this is very interesting. I went to Denmark to open a temple, a center there, from Bury Place, from London, and so I was deported. Panchadravida Maharaj was living in an apartment there as a hippie with his wife and child, and he took me in, and he became very interested in Krishna consciousness. And he was waiting for me to come home. I'd go out on the street and distribute Bhakti Godheads. But I got picked up by the police, and they put me in jail, and they deported me, put me on a plane. I never got home to his apartment. But he then went to India and joined Srila Prabhupada, Panchadravida Maharaj. He was really nice. So, what was that? Oh, finally, so when they put me back in America, I went to see, there was some gathering of Srila Prabhupada in New York. Actually, I was living in New York. I don't have a great chronological sense by that time. I was working in Bali Mardan's incense factory like that. And they put me in an apartment 2 blocks from the temple. You can imagine Srila Prabhupada is there. All the devotees, the presidents from all the different temples converge on it. People come from New Vrindavan, people come from all over the United States, and you couldn't get in the temple room for Bhagavatam class. People are out in the hall, and they're out, and from the hall they're outside the temple down the front stairs. There's so many devotees.
Is this Henry Street now?
Yeah. And, well, I had all this association with Srila Prabhupada in England, but I'm not a temple president, and Srila Prabhupada's giving association to the people he's trying to work with, the managers, So I'm in my apartment, I'm 2 blocks away, and I'm being very childish in my mind. I said to Srila Prabhupada in my mind, all right, catch this. I said, if I can't see you, I'm not going to eat, and that's it. 3 to 5 minutes later, there's a knock on the front door of the apartment where I'm. Srila Prabhupada wants to see you in his room. And I go there, I sit down, and Srila Prabhupada gives me cookies, peanuts, like that, because I said, I'm not going to eat, right, unless I see you. And, it can't be the coincidence. Srila Prabhupada's sensitive to everything. So, then, there's a little bottle of honey on his desk. He has so many presents, right? Gifts, gifts, gifts. And it says, pure honey on the bottle, little bottle. So Srila Prabhupada undoes it and holds the honey about this high above his head, and he pours it as if he's drinking water. And he gets just a little honey and gets it in his mouth, and he says, and it reads pure honey. He says pure honey. He says pure cheating. He said. That was nice. So yeah. So then that wasn't enough. He knew I wanted to be close to him. So then he was doing a bhajan, and he was recording it, and all the presidents were in that room. I remember Vishnu John was there, and Vishnu John was playing kartals while Srila Prabhupada was on harmonium. And then he would then put on the headphones and record again with the mridanga. But he gave instruction to invite Ishan to this session, you know. It was just out of his kindness, because he knew that I was like a little baby squawking, I want to see my daddy, you know. And so he included me like that out of his kindness. But really he was always working with the people that he was trying to have take on responsibility. But me, I'm more like a sudra than an administrator, you know. So I work with my hands. I have a little desire to understand the philosophy, but I'm not a manager or a leader, you know. So I was obviously not included, but when I was asking to be included, he included me like that. So let's see. So we're moving on. Oh yeah. So I get to India. Why? Srila Prabhupada, he couldn't see that making mridangas is passed on from father to son traditionally. But the kids are growing up in this modern world. They want to go to Calcutta and learn how to use a computer or work in an office. They don't want to learn to make drums, work with leather. So Srila Prabhupada feels like it's a dying art. So he sends out a letter to all centers. They were airmail, and he had hand-picked mridanga makers. One man on clay, who was a potter, for the shells, and one man on skin to make the drum. And he had handpicked them, and they were working on our land in Mayapur. There was no building at that point. The first building was under construction. And I remember I was cooking for the devotees in a tent at that time in the field. And so we had handpicked these people, and they were making drums, and we were selling the drums. They were working for us, and we were selling their drums. So it was a way that Srila Prabhupada is the transcendental entrepreneur, right? It wasn't that he had to lose money. They're working for him, making drums, and we're selling the drums. So, and at the same time, those people are supposed to be giving us instruction how to make the drums. Nobody learns from these people unless you become an apprentice, because that's the way they learn. The other boys would come with clipboards and make notes, but I was like their menial servant, bringing water, stretching skins out in the field and whatnot. Anyway, I finally learned to make a drum. I take my drum from Mayapur to Vrindavan to show Srila Prabhupada. I say, can I now stay in India for the rest of my life and make these drums? Okay? So this was on a walk, because Srila Prabhupada had been ill in Vrindavan. They were doing the foundation excavation for the Krishna Balaram Mandir. There were big piles of earth, like 5-6 feet high, and big holes in the ground, and Srila Prabhupada was ill, and there was no house for him to live in. It was under construction, his quarters. He was out, and it was hot. He was out on the construction site between these mounds of earth and these holes in the ground on a cot, and I was sleeping like 3-4 yards away, 3 yards more, like 3-4 yards. I could hear him make sounds of discomfort, you know, during the night. So he wasn't going on his walk. Then he was feeling better 3-4 days later, a little better, and he didn't take the complete walk. He walked a little. Srila Prabhupada wants you to come on the walk, me, because he wants to discuss mridangas. So he walks a little bit, you know, a couple of 100 yards, and then goes off the road and find a little clearing off the road. we sit down, and Srila Prabhupada says, did you bring tape recorder? No, Srila Prabhupada. You know, there's about 5 of us. So I say, you know, can I stay in India? Because I'm a round peg in a square hole. That's my whole life. I don't fit in this world. Won't go into that. But it's a fact. So I think, but in India I felt that I was so at home for the first time. This is wonderful. So I said, can I stay and do these? He said, you know, in India you buy some dahi or whatever in a little clay pot, and it's low-fired clay, and when you finish you throw it in the gutter. So Srila Prabhupada said, we're sitting in this clearing, he says, so much work to make these drums. You know, a professional can make 3, maybe 4 a week if he's working full time. So much work to make these drums, he says, and our men throw them down like pots, he says. You know, American boys, you know, Western people. So he says, so you go back to the West and you use your technology and make a drum that they can't break. He said. This fiberglass mridanga was not my idea. It was Srila Prabhupada's idea. He wanted a drum that they can't break. He said, and put a strong strap on it. So all of a sudden my whole, you know, I was romantically thinking that I can stay in India and make mridangas for the rest of my life. How do you change? Turn it upside down. So I...
Take a break. You want to take a break?
No.
Okay.
Unless you want.
No, it's up to you.
So then he calls a meeting, a day or so goes by, he calls a meeting in his unfinished quarters there in Vrindavan. And, what? Yeah. So we have kirtan. He says, Ishan has made this drum. And I thought, you know, I'll play the drum. We're going to have kirtan. And so I stand up and I'm holding the drum. Srila Prabhupada goes like this, sit down. He didn't say anything, but he said, Harikesh will play the drum.
This was a synthetic or not?
No, it was,
Clay.
yeah, I had learned to make a real drum, and I brought it to Srila Prabhupada to show him. And so with asking, now I've made the drum, so here's what I made, can I... So, he said, Ishan has made this drum, we'll have kirtan. And where was I going with that?
He told you to sit down and somebody
He said,
Yeah.
Harikesh will play.
Yeah, but there was some point that, oh yeah! So then after the kirtan and everything, what's his name, Jayatirtha is there. And it's me and Jayatirtha and Srila Prabhupada, maybe some 1 or 2 other devotees. And he says, so, continuing the conversation from the other day on the walk, he said, so where would you like to go in America, in the West, to make these drums? So I said, I had heard that Los Angeles...
You're in Vrindavan now?
Yeah.
But you brought the drum from Mayapur?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I had heard that Los Angeles was a place where they had all kinds of plastic industries, plastic synthetics, big time. So I says, Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada. And Jayatirtha says, no, Srila Prabhupada, I think he should go to London. And Srila Prabhupada looks at me. For some reason, Jayatirtha didn't want the project there. I don't know what. Srila Prabhupada looks at me, he says, London? I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, Los Angeles. He says, good. He says, Jayatirtha will give you all facility. And he looks at Jayatirtha, waiting for a nod, and Jayatirtha, yes, and nods, yes. And then we get out, we get outside of the Srila Prabhupada's room, and Jayatirtha turns on me with a vengeance. He's really angry. And he says, all right, Ishan, how much room do you need and what do you, da-da-da-da. So you go to Delhi and I'll send you a ticket. You wait there and I'll send you a plane. Ticket never came. I was there. I caught malaria, almost died there. No ticket, never heard any word from him. So it took me a little while to get to, of course there were more things that happened in India, so I should go back for a minute. But it took me a while to get to Los Angeles. But I remember I was in the Calcutta temple, and there's a big porch in the Calcutta temple. It's marble, black and white squares. And we were, all the boys would sleep on that marble porch. And we would just lie on a mat or whatever, on our bag, sleeping bag, whatever, or something. And I was reading Krishna book in the trilogy version, and it was time before bed, and I remember, and just reading. I'm lying on my stomach and reading Krishna book on my mat, and I can sense that somebody's looking over my shoulder, and I look up, and it's Srila Prabhupada. He's looking over my shoulder because he wants to see what I'm reading. And he sees I'm reading Krishna book. You know what he says? Thank you very much. He was so grateful that somebody's reading his books, that some of his devotees are reading, like that. Anyway, so me and Bharadraj, we were friends before we joined the movement. We were living in the same house together. And I wrote Bharadraj because Srila Prabhupada had a doll maker there on the Mayapur land, and I was learning drums, and I wrote him, come out here and learn to make these dolls because this is for you. It's your service. So he came, and we were all there together, Adi Dev, Bharadraj, myself on drums, and learning to make drums. But Jayatirtha didn't want me to go to Los Angeles. I don't know why. So somehow I got back to the West, and I go from temple to temple. The president always said, they're thinking, oh, we can make money out of this, but it doesn't happen overnight. So they say, maybe you should wash pots or something instead. But then this way I finally reached New Orleans somehow. Montreal, Toronto, Dallas, New Orleans. And I'm making experiments there with fiberglass and different types of heads and this and that. And Srila Prabhupada was visiting New Orleans. So he's expecting that. He had sent me off to Los Angeles months ago. And he walks in and he says, and he sees me and he says, you're here? And he starts to chuckle like, what's going on? So anyway, they were never properly trained in that temple. Nityananda had 2 wives, and they would be in the kitchen cooking, and we learned, that the deity room, the kitchen is just an extension of the deity room. We never talked in the kitchen when we joined the movement. It was out of the question. You could listen to a tape or something, but here in New Orleans, these girls were laughing and joking and talking about everything under the sun, and Srila Prabhupada says, I can't eat their cooking, he says, it's giving me a headache. He's in another building, but he gets the energy somehow, or God knows how, but he's saying, eating their cooking is giving me a headache. Let Ishan cook, So I became Srila Prabhupada's cook. And I think people should know that Srila Prabhupada wants us to be in the temple, it's like we're on the altar when we're cooking for Krishna. And he wanted that, and he made a point of it. So people should know, if they want. So anyway, finally, I write Bharadraj, and he sends me airfare to get to Los Angeles. Jayatirtha sees me in Los Angeles. He says, "What are you doing here?" He didn't want me there. I don't know what that was all about. But I started working there. And Karandar gave me all facility. Karandar said, "Srila Prabhupada, because you need money, you need a space to work, you need materials, you need tools, it's not a joke, you need accommodation for your family." And so Karandar said, "Tell me what you need, write it all out, when does production start, this, that." I give him a whole thing, and he financed the whole project. Without him, it could never have happened. So...
And Jayatirtha got sent to England anyway.
Yeah, he lost his head. So, when I was in India, for a while, the drum learning was put on hold. Gargamuni was selling mridangas and making money that way. He was selling mridangas from Calcutta to the west. And he convinced Bhavananda and Jayapataka that Srila Prabhupada doesn't want this learning to go on anymore for drumming. I guess it was business competition or something. I don't know. So they stopped the whole thing. So I had no engagement. All of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada doesn't want us to learn to make drums anymore. So I became, I reached Delhi, I became the pujari in the Delhi temple. Yeah, that's right, I became the pujari in the Delhi temple. Radha Partha Sarathi. They were very beautiful deities. And I was pretty much, with my wife, we took care of them morning till night. Srila Prabhupada comes, and I didn't know. I didn't know they were not installed. But in other words, we were worshipping them so the devotees could have a focus in kirtan and whatnot. So Srila Prabhupada was installing Radha Partha Sarathi on the roof of the Delhi temple. There was a little room up there for the deities. And I was his assistant. He was bathing them with substances, yogurt, this, that. And more or less beside Srila Prabhupada, we're on the floor, and he's doing everything, but I'm there in case something is needed. And from Srila Prabhupada's eyes, just as you've seen what a water pistol or a syringe is like, water comes from as he's bathing the deities, water comes out from his eyes completely horizontal to the ground, completely parallel to the ground, like this far, like out of a syringe, both eyes, psh, and I'm awestruck. Of course, we know these are ecstatic symptoms, but and as soon as Srila Prabhupada notices that I'm staring at him, he makes a very curt gesture to get my attention somewhere else, points to the floor, and I'm like I'm supposed to wipe up something like that. But that was something that to behold, So at one time, I had a big boil on my cheek. It was like a little mountain, and I was rushing around on the roof serving, and Srila Prabhupada's room was just off to the side of the deity room on the roof. And he saw me. I was going past him, to do something with the deities, and he saw this on my, and he said, does it hurt very much, he said. It's like he was so concerned about us individually. He just like a father, you know. My Vibhavati, my wife, she wanted to write for BTG, but there was like a little clique of men who were writing the articles, and were not including her, and she felt it was a gender thing, and she complained to Srila Prabhupada because he was on the roof sometimes relaxing or looking off the side of the roof. There was a wall around it. And she says, they won't let me. Srila Prabhupada says, make some arrangement. And then she continues to complain that they won't. He said, make some arrangement. In other words, if we want to do some service, there's always going to be difficulties. There's always going to be impediments, and he's dealing with them day and night. He's dealing with them day after day. They're blocking the Americans need visas to go to India, this, that. He's straightening things out constantly. He's saying that one way or another, you want to do that service, you come to grips with it, you make an arrangement. So he expects that of us. He's expecting that we have to come to grips with the impediments in our service and do it because we want to serve Krishna, and don't whimper, just do something. That came through like that. Let's see where I am. So, Delhi, installing the deities, wake up, okay. Oh, he once said to me in India, Srila Prabhupada said, thank you so much for coming to India. I know it's so austere for you people, you Western people, and you're undergoing so much tribulation. He said, thank you so much. I said, really? I'm more comfortable here than I was in America, but I was an exception, I guess, in that respect. But I was in Mayapur there, where I was learning to make the drums. This is a very important story. Our people are so inclined to be impressed with the local people in India and all their different ways of doing things, and their ways of singing, and their ways of antics and whatnot. So people were changing the way Srila Prabhupada, he's the Acharya, he sings in a certain way. He sings Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Panchatattva, then Hare Krishna, and he in a certain mood and building slowly, coming to a climax, finish, boss. All of a sudden we're singing like local people. All of a sudden we're doing everything under the sun that he never did. Even today it's going on. I see, but I don't say. But so they would be changing things in the temple room, singing in different ways. And Srila Prabhupada was on the 3rd floor, I believe. He would go from his room out. The building was under construction. There was no barrier around the porches, or just plain slabs. Srila Prabhupada would go out, and I got and some instruction on that slab. Srila Prabhupada would go out and he'd go down to Bhavananda's room and say, what are they singing? And because they're changing then this would go on, and Bhavananda was getting unsettled, because this was very disturbing. Srila Prabhupada was very disturbed. And one night I led kirtan in the temple room downstairs. And I
You're back in Mayapur now.
Yeah, I like the way Srila Prabhupada sings. I'm not enamored by some whatever village, whatever. He's a pure devotee, he's our acharya, and he's my spiritual master, and nobody else impresses me. No matter how musical they are, or how they stretch, you know. Bhaktisiddhanta didn't even let them play musical instruments because they're so egotistical. We're being very melodious, this, that. So I lead kirtan again. Only I'm leading the way I'm trying to follow. I liked the way Srila Prabhupada sang. So I tried to sing in the same mood. That's what Krishna consciousness means to me. So again, Srila Prabhupada leaves his room, he goes to Bhavananda's room and says, who's leading that kirtan? He says, that's Ishan, Srila Prabhupada. He tries to sing the way you sing. Srila Prabhupada says to Bhavananda, he's intelligent. He should only lead kirtan here. He was, what, Srila Prabhupada can dance in ecstasy, he can chant in ecstasy, he can display all the symptoms of ecstasy, but whatever he's giving us is for our, as the acharya, he's giving us something that we should follow. He's not doing it for his entertainment. He's giving us, but they're missing that point, of course. Sometimes, some people. So I thought people should know that Srila Prabhupada liked if somebody took up his style of kirtan and tried to follow him. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the sound vibration emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection. Okay, so let's do that a little bit. So, yeah, I was back in London. He was giving assignments to people. Sham Sundar this, Mukunda this, Gurudas this, that. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, can you give me something to do too? And he said, you have a brain, use it. He said, what would you like to do for Krishna? And I had never thought along those lines. I had never thought about, well, how do we spread this movement or this or that? I was just attracted to learning how to be a devotee. He said, what would you like to do for Krishna? I never thought like that, Srila Prabhupada. But could you give me some service? He said, try to understand our philosophy. He said, what would you like to do for Krishna? So, that took a couple of years to, I'm still thinking about it. But then when I saw that he wanted people to learn to make drums, I said, that's my service, And but that's nice. He's encouraging not to be robots and fall in line with the local temple president, but everybody should have some creative impulse, how they would like to serve, and that should be fanned. That was the spirit in which he wanted us to take up Krishna consciousness. And so people should know that.
Yeah.
Everyone should be thinking, well, what would I like to do to help spread this movement? Mayapur, person. Yes, I was on that porch on the 3rd floor, and it had no, what do you call that?
The rail?
No railing around it.
Wow, it's dangerous.
Yeah, it was just a cement slab, nothing on it, and the building was under construction. Somehow I was up on the 3rd floor, and Srila Prabhupada was like strolling around the building, and I asked him a question, because in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, towards the end of the book, it mentions Siddha Deha, that's the spiritual body of our spiritual form. And I would ask Srila Prabhupada a question about something about that, Siddha Deha, what it means, and I don't remember specifically my question, but it was in relation to that term. And Srila Prabhupada stopped, and he turned on me very sharply, abruptly, and he said, "First understand that you're not this body." End of discussion. I couldn't speak, in other words, you want to consider these subjects about your spiritual form and the spiritual. First have the realization. First become a liberated soul. Then we'll talk about that. Get off the material platform. Realize that you're not this body. Then you're qualified to, because today everyone is talking Raganuga Bhakti, but maybe they're all liberated, but I'm not. So like that, people should know what is Srila Prabhupada's attitude. I think like that. Calcutta, let's see. Vrindavan. Oh, when I was in India, see, I'm not a worldly person. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a money person. I've always been in poverty. I take what comes. It's my way. And I'm not an entrepreneur. So when I got to India, I was penniless. I got enough money to get there, and that's it. I checked into the temple, right? So we used to wash our dhotis in the Ganga. So my dhoti was brown and very old, and similarly my kurta, And when I went to Vrindavan to see Srila Prabhupada with the drum that I had made, he looked at me, and he said, "Why you're dressed like such a viragi?" He said, "A renunciant." And I said, "Srila Prabhupada, that's all I have. This is what I have. It's not that I'm trying to be renounced. It's all I got." So he calls Gurudas, who's acting as temple president then. And he was still married at that point. And I think, anyway, he says to Gurudas, he says, this boy will never ask you for anything, he said. But you have to take care of them. You have to take care of the devotees, So anyway, people, that's something we have to understand in our movement. That there are those who are very good in the world, and there are those who are like children. They're like Sudras. I'm a Sudra by nature. And I want to take shelter of somebody who will, I'll do my part and he'll do his part. But it wasn't working that way. It was, even now I see that so-and-so is not, throw him out. We can't use him like that. So, but Srila Prabhupada wanted that those who were in the charge, those who were of means, should take the rest of us like a family and take care of each other. People should know Srila Prabhupada wanted that. Okay, so let's see. That closed, so I'll open it up. Documents. Not there. Excuse me. Memory. Sorry. It's really nice.
Okay.
There was this ceremony, which probably Pushkar was part of at different times, where there would be two lines of devotees outside the temple. That was LA. And Srila Prabhupada had a basket, and I think he would go over to one line and the person would put a flower in his basket, and he'd put a flower in the person's hand, and he'd go over to the other side, I think. I'm not sure. And
There's videos of it.
okay, so when he came to me, I was working in my drum shop. When he came to me, I just felt that I couldn't take a flower and give a flower. I bowed down and reached up to put my flower in his basket. So somebody who was watching told me after that he started laughing, and he took a handful of flowers from the basket and put them in. I could feel his fingers on my head. It went like I guess there's little things here and there you can't remember. I'm trying I thought to write about it because I have a one-liner for each of these.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Whatever happened with the Mridanga shop? Did you, how long did that go on?
After Srila Prabhupada left, passed on, he, everything was so crazy.
He got a Mridanga. That's written in other places, of course. Before he left, they brought him to Vrindavan.
Yeah.
And he said it was 80% as...
They don't know how to tune the thing, you know. It has to be tuned nicely. And also I have many ideas how to improve it. But I left the shop because I was so discouraged with the way things were running in the temple after I just left.
When was that?
77.
Okay.
There were people who were, I was in charge of the men's ashram. Not men's ashram, I was actually in charge of the men's ashram, the new building. And I was in charge of the Bhakta program and the drum project. And the Rameshwar wanted me to take over the kitchen as well, oversee. But I wanted to throw this guy out of the Bhakta program because he was gay and he was disturbing the other men at night. And Rameshwar refused. We have to. And then there was one guy who was working, he was good, like a builder type of guy, but he would go out and get drunk and he would smoke cigarettes. He'd go out to smoke. And I said, what? I said, Srila Prabhupada always talked about that if you add water to the milk, it's no longer milk. And that we should, you know, get the cream, and we're Brahminicals. And I said, and you got these people living here, and they're alcoholics, and you know the guru thing. It was a great shock to me that these men should posture in this way. I don't mind them trying to administrate or whatever. I don't mind them being leaders. I don't even mind them giving initiation, but let us be honest and say we're neophytes just like the rest of you, but we've been placed in charge, and we're trying to carry on all together. Why should we, you know? It's ludicrous, you know. And one by one, you know, it became revealed. They felt so. It was so disturbing to my mind. So I left L.A. and went out to get a job for the first time since I was about 40 or so, I think. I don't know. And I had joined when I was 25. So I don't get all the math right, but so I had trained other people to make the drums, and the fellow I had trained, he died. He had, I think, diabetes.
Yeah.
So
his brother took over.
His brother took over.
And he's still doing it.
And he's still doing it.
That's amazing.
Ratna
Ratna's
Bhushan.
older brother took first initiation from Prabhupada. His name is Manu Priya.
Yeah, he was a beautiful person. He was so humble, and he was an artist too. And he could do airbrush work, you know.
He used to paint some of the drums.
He did. He sent one, I don't know where it ever landed up, but I think they sent it to Srila Prabhupada in India. But he would be trudging around the shop, you know, just trying to move his feet. He'd go to have his dialysis.
The last place he should have been was being exposed to that fumes and that resin.
That's who he was, but he was really a sweet person. And then he taught his brother, I guess. And I tried to get in touch with Ratna Bhushan, but he wouldn't. He clammed up. He wouldn't talk to me. It's like, I got the drums now. But I have lots of ideas. Number one, that drum should not be sold for profit.
Oh no, you're not going to convince anyone of that.
It
After
should-
they work on it and they
It should be sold for at cost. Number two, that I could make the drum for half that price. They don't have to stick with those materials, and I have what's the word? Different way. I can make the drum differently and use less material.
Have you ever seen the ones Pavamana was making? They were regular mridungas, but they had adjustable heads.
No, I didn't. I know that he was.
Oh, they were plastic with regular heads, regular mridunga heads,
But
not plastic heads.
They got regular heads here in the temple. What are they good for in this kind of humidity?
Right.
It's not practical. You can take those fiberglass things and take them out in the rain and leave them in there. You can float them in your bathtub.
Drop them off the roof.
They'll still play the same, you know. Not that they can't be improved, they can, but the tendency is they wanted to start selling them. They wanted to get them out the door. They wanted to start bringing in income. They didn't want to bother with research and development anymore. But I know that the drum can be improved a lot and to sound more like a mridunga. And be more stable too. And they're not standardized. Each one has a different shell thickness and a different sound. Some of them sound nice, some of them sound terrible. Because they're not, fiberglass is not the way to go. There are other plastics that come out of a mold that each shell is identical and they have the same
You
form.
sure they're not doing that?
Oh, I know they're not doing it. I know how. Fiberglass, you shoot it in with a gun. And no two shells are the same. Besides, we weren't doing that. We were farming it out to some place in Tijuana or something like that. They don't make the shells. Then this other guy tried to do it in the Philippines, the Tilak mridunga. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I know several parties have tried. I heard that they were making it in Hungary.
But he couldn't make a drum. It's not that it has to, that if it looks the same, it's going to do. There are dynamics in there that are critical, and you have to love the instrument too and want to make a sound. And he said he was looking for me for 2 years while he was putting thousands of dollars into it in the Philippines, and he couldn't get the drum to sound like a Balaram drum. You know.
He gave up now.
No, they're putting them out, but I have 3 or 4 of his drums at home. He sent them to me and said, "What's with these drums? Why they're not working? Give me some feedback."
You did.
I told him what I thought, yeah. But, he's a businessman. He's not interested in drums. I don't know. So, but it shouldn't be. It should be like at cost. Srila Prabhupada, I didn't tell you on the tape, but Srila...
Oh, it's still recording, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's still on.
Srila Prabhupada said the day will come when there will be massive Sankirtan in the streets of all the big cities. And he said, and they'll want drums, and we'll give them drums. Make these drums, you know.
Wonderful.
So we, you know, where we are along that evolution.
It's an important part of the Sankirtan. It's amazing.
So,
I never knew you were tied into it like that. Yeah,
Well, he's the guy.
yeah, I never knew that. Yeah.
but it was Srila Prabhupada's vision.
Yeah.
All I did was put myself there and really try, and somehow Krishna helped.
You showed an interest, you know, and you showed the interest, and Srila Prabhupada was fanning it for you and wanted you to really do it. He knew you were the right man for the job.
Well, the other people came, but
Yeah.
they weren't apprentices to the drum makers. They wanted to sit with clipboards and make drawings and ask questions through an interpreter.
Mm.
Like they would say, why does he do it like this? Why doesn't he do it like that? And the interpreter would ask the drum maker. And the drum maker would, you know, sort of look into space, you know, and considered it. And then he'd say, my father did it this way.
Yeah.
But Ishan had to clean like skins full of skin.
Oh, I would get bloody skin.
Nobody wanted to do that.
Wow.
In a burlap sack, a freshly removed skin from a cow would come.
Oh, no.
And my job was to take it and stretch it out and stake it in the field and fight off the dogs
Oh my gosh.
that wanted to bite the skin.
Oh my gosh. Don't realize all that goes into the
That-
making of a mridanga.
Oh yeah, and then you have to scrape the hair off one side, and then you have to scrape off the extra layers of skin. Comes in layers of
Mhm.
different tissue. You have to get it, scrape that down on the other side till you get, and each part of the cow is for a different part of the drum. Some part for the small head, some part for the large head, some part for the straps, some part for the puckery, the weaving.
Yeah.
And it's all, you know, and it's a science. And now I don't remember how to make a drum, although if I worked with a drum maker for a month or so, I'd be back, you know, but it's, I'm more inclined, if I ever had the opportunity to improve the drum that exists and to sell it at less than half of what they're selling drums for today. And
Wonderful.
I'm not an entrepreneur. I can do the work, but somebody has to be financial backing and
Yeah.
research and development and stuff. I'm thinking about 3D printing. You know what is 3D printing?
Not exactly.
Well, it's a new technology that people are
I'm gonna stop
producing. Yeah.
That's it. Okay, we're back on.
So when I was in New Orleans, there was a farm associated with the. There was a farm associated with the temple in New Orleans, and Nityananda was the president. And he was a great entrepreneur, a great business mind, and he was making lots of money in different ways. Tremendous incense distribution. Whatever he touched. He was very hardworking, and but his attitude towards devotees were more or less that they were, okay, thanks, it's wonderful. His attitude towards devotees, they were like facilities or instruments or whatever. they were not, and he would say at times like, "These are my devotees," you know. So some of them tried to escape from his temple, and he would kidnap them at the airport or something. It's true. It's true. I know that for a fact. So when he was taking Srila Prabhupada for a walk, showing him the farm at New Orleans.
That was Mississippi.
Mississippi, that's right. And here this, here that, and we have this Srila Prabhupada, and we have this Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada would stop and say, and you take care of the devotees.
Mm.
And then we go further on the walk, and we have this Srila Prabhupada, and we have this, and you take care of the devotee. So this is another, you know, he wanted us to be a family and to really care for each other. This is starting to happen that in our society more. There's hospice, etc. These things will be put in place, but it's been a long time coming, and a lot of people were discarded or whatever, not cared for. And I know so many stories, but it's not necessary to go into that.
But Prabhupada got on his case because he didn't have the equipment covered also. He wasn't taking care of the equipment. It was going to get rusty, and that's a famous thing.
Oh, I didn't.
And when he came to that farm, he said, "Why is this not covered?"
So, I won't get into it all. I can tell you on the side a lot of stories, but keeping it focused on Srila Prabhupada, he really wanted that the leadership should take a responsible position and take care of all the devotees with love and care, and sincere care like that. And I think that's about all I can remember. Of course, as soon as I leave here, I'll remember something else. But most important things that I can is that although Srila Prabhupada appears as a very formal authority figure, very formal, very severe in his classes, in his walks, in his everything, there's a whole other side of him that's so beautiful and so soft and so loving that it's almost impossible to describe how gracious and how kind and how caring he is. And everybody should know that about him. And he wanted us to take care of each other. He wanted that. He wanted us to understand that he's the Acharya and to follow him in our bhajan. He wanted that. And he wanted us to be clean, cut, and at least look like a gentleman, and not to look like hippies. And he didn't like the beards and the long hair. And he didn't. And we've come so far from all of that. He wanted us to look a certain way and act a certain way and behave with each other in a loving, beautiful way, and to follow his leadership and his way of doing things. And he wanted us to be formal in the kitchen, and now it's just, I go in the kitchen here in this temple, and people are talking about everything under the sun and laughing and talking and joking. And it's not Krishna consciousness the way he taught it. The people should know about that. And I can't remember all else that I spoke about, but I think you get some of the idea that is the most beautiful, transcendental person. And we can't focus on him too much and learn from him too much.
Well, I saw a letter recently where Prabhupada had written you, I don't remember the context at all, but it's not even apparent from the letter, but you wanted to be independent. He was saying, no, better you come back. Do you remember that letter? Or somewhere?
No, I don't remember the letter. Yes, he wanted us to... today, there's so little participation. Of course, I can't talk about that because I don't know the internal dynamics of what's going on, but he wanted us to go to morning and evening programs and do these things together. He wanted it so much. But anyway, enough is enough.
Okay.
Wonderful, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I hope
Thanks.
I haven't offended anybody.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.